Hi, I'm Barry Liebert. We're going to talk today about Genpact and with its head of AI, Vikram Mahidhar. Let me introduce you to my guest today. Vikram, nice to see you. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you as well, Barry.
Now, one of the things you and I run into regularly is the difference between companies thinking surveys and data are the same. Because I think many companies don't have the data that you're talking about. So talk to me a little bit about your experience so far with companies not understanding what data really is, and what is data in your perspective for this?
Okay, so surveys are purely primary research and opinion-related pieces.
Yep.
I wouldn't count that as real data.
Okay.
When it comes to analyzing and coming up with data-driven insights and decisions. In every company now, with the adoption of cloud, data layer is being separated from the application layer.
Fantastic.
It's a big movement out there,
Yep.
right? Everybody, you talk to, a large aircraft manufacturer to a retailer, everybody's creating a data lake or a data pond or some form of
Ocean.
some form of water body,
Right.
but there's data in it. And what's happening out there is the intent of these data lakes was, let's bring all variables together, and then let's figure out insights to drive our business, right? However, when it comes to that insights layer, very few companies have really figured out, how do I mine this data, right? It's not about putting data in SAP HANA and then accessing it. It's about actually looking at the business problem, framing the right business question, then framing the solution correctly. Okay, and I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this because 95% of the projects that I come across fail because they have not framed the problem correctly, right? And then thinking about, it's not about, do I have all the data in one place or not? It is about, do I have the right data? I don't need big data, I'm okay with small data, but do I have the right data? And if not, right, what algorithmic techniques am I going to use to actually analyze that low density data or figure out where the holes are in the data and fill up those holes? Or second thing is, let me put some sort of a MVP, minimal viable product, out there and then collect more data, create more hooks for that data, right? So that's sort of, that's the overall setup for data.
Yep.
Now, another one very important piece that most companies miss out is the interaction data. And what that means is, think about an autonomous car.
Yep.
Right? Living example of
Absolutely.
AI. It was put out on the street more than 10 years ago. And when they put it out, the amount of data that they had was a third of what they have today.
Absolutely.
After putting that on the street, they started gathering more data. And they used that to make, the drivability of that car a lot more precise. And same thing applies to even your applications. You don't have to wait until you have everything. Remember, you were at zero.
Most companies are.
Right?
Yep.
So any progress, even if it is 50%, it's pretty awesome.
Right,
It's 50%.
absolutely.
And then gather more data and start enriching it.
And you talked to me also about the fact, which I think is fantastic, finding owners for these projects. Because if you have the data, hopefully companies do, and they do as they begin to create data lakes, and they know where to find the algorithms. You said, gee, we need to be able to find owners of these projects to ensure their success.
Yeah. It's critical. Most of the times, people think that AI is technology. AI is not technology. AI is math. It's a different way of doing math.
Yep.
And the domain expertise, which is whether it is a business process or a business expertise, plays a vital role, because if you do that math wrong, you got the business wrong.
Right. I
Right.
see that all the time.
Right? So the key is that the business has to own it. I've seen in most cases where business owns it and adopts it, the success is right there.
Fantastic.
Okay, so that's rule number one. Number two is, when it comes to collaboration, obviously, your technology organization becomes a big pillar there, because they are going to provide you access to the data,
Yep.
etc. But then also one would say that, well, do I need tons and tons of data scientists or AI experts to analyze this data? I would say you don't need tons. Actually, data analysts and data and AI experts are the most scalable. It's the most scalable skill
Absolutely,
set,
that's what we're finding as well. Yep.
right? But the key is that once you start solving one problem, think about creating the data pipeline, right? And what I mean by pipeline is, let's say that you're analyzing an invoice, my earlier example. You're analyzing to match quantity and price.
Yes.
But there are 17 other elements on that invoice. The timestamps, the date stamp, the location, the carrier, the trade lane, whatever it is. You should capture all that data. And that is your data pipeline, because next time when you want to analyze and come up with, say, a logistical planning problem, you have all these data sets. That's one piece of it. The second piece of it is models, because it's all about models. You got to maintain the library of all those models, so that next time you're not reinventing the wheel. And that's right there, there's scalability. I would say that, so I talk about this in 3 steps.
Great.
First mile problem, which I described, framing the problem.
Yep.
In between, which is how do you really deploy? So I talked about data pipeline, etc. But there's a last mile problem, and I think which is extremely important. If you cannot and do not have the ability to put all these algorithms in production, right, you will never be able to succeed. So it's very important that whenever you plan for solving these different business problems that I talked about, plan on day one, how are you going to put it in production? Because it may require different architecture. It may require a different way of planning on how you're going to feed the data and how you're going to take the insights out. Or it may require actually very different way of adopting it from process standpoint. So it's very critical to plan for that last mile first.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, Barry.
Look forward to seeing you again.
Appreciate being here.
Thank you.